Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played for many years with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings, and now he is a hockey pundit. He is the better half of the Laidlaw and Allen report. And Tom, finally, we're getting closer and closer to being able to talk about what's going on the ice. But first, we have a couple of issues that we've got to address first. And
the first one is that hat.
You don't like my hat?
I like it a lot. No, I like it a lot. It's like I feel like you and I should have about 100 acres of property there and be farming too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's funny. I actually have my son-in-law got me for Christmas a Detroit Lions hat. I go to their games.
Yeah,
and it's a really nice hat. But I only wear that to the games. So, but this beat up hat I've had for, 15 years.
Right.
So, and it's my bumming around the lake house hat. So,
I like it. I like it a lot. Seriously, it's like we're farming.
Yeah, it would be something like your dad wore. Only his would have said Peterbilt on it, or
John Deere. John Deere
would have been a better one. So, but anyway, you were the first to send me a story, and the irony, of course, is that it was a USA Today story, which I would have been part of had I still been there.
Yeah.
But the story was about how there are people within the medical community that are a little concerned that all the tests that the athletes are going to be using up, and the team personnel, to make sure that they're healthy every day. So if you think about it, these teams for a couple of months, some players are going to be tested every other day, and some of them are going to be tested every day in other sports. So they're going to use up a lot of tests.
Yep.
And there's concern about that that these tests might go to other people and could be more useful in determining where we're going with this pandemic than this select small group that gets continuously tested all the time. Yep. Now, this is a real ethical dilemma because, and I think it's complicated too. Like, it's real easy to sit back and say, oh, why do we need to get these athletes tested? We shouldn't play. But there is a belief out there, and I think it's legitimate, that we need sports, that, we're going through a lot here, and you need the diversion of sports. And if we're going to have that diversion, we have to make sure the athletes are safe. So I don't think this is cut and dry. I don't think you can just sit back and say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
Because I think they do serve a purpose. They do serve value.
Right.
Coming back and helping.
Right. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate there. So, and was interested in that article too that I really didn't think of. I just actually thought of the physical test itself. Is there going to be enough of those? But it's also the time now you have to go to the lab and take up time and space at the lab. And when you see places like Florida that are having record deaths, record positive tests, Texas, all these other places that are having problems with it. At the time that they came up with these plans to go back to play, states like Florida and Texas were not in the shape that they're in right now. Now, we would hope for a lot of reasons that by the time we do go back to play, that all the states have things under control much better. But I know here in New York, one of the big issues was when the pandemic first started was the load, the stress load on the medical community, the doctors, the nurses, having enough beds, having enough incubators, all that kinds of stuff. So now, if we, and we won't know, like all these, so baseball, hockey, basketball are all roughly, coming back within a 2 or 3 week span. All of a sudden now there's this flood of tests getting done that it pumped into the system. Does that overload the system? I mean, you're going down to Florida with basketball, at least with hockey, you're going up into Canada where things aren't as bad. I would assume the league's done such a great job already that they would have checked with the Canadian government. I'm sure the Canadian government would have demanded that they find out for sure that there's going to be enough lab space to get all these tests done and not take away from the Canadian citizens. So, yeah, it is a dilemma. I agree with you that it's great. It is an important thing to get sports back, but man, if we find out somewhere down the road, we find out that somebody dies from the virus because they couldn't get a test and all the tests were getting used by pro athletes, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's complicated, because part of the issue is while this is going on is we need to have some return to normalcy. Now, I'm not getting into the debate about whether we opened back up too quickly or anything. That will leave that to people that know more about it. But it's a concern, and sports does not operate in a vacuum. We have to operate within what's happening within society, and I mean, I do think that, and I believe this strongly, that sports has value to society. I think it is, and it's more than a diversion as well. I mean, I think I think young people learn from watching professional sports. Are good or bad, right or wrong. We have a very competitive society in America, and you've got to be able to compete if you want to be successful. You compete every day at your work. You're trying to get ahead. You're trying to be the number one salesperson. You're trying to be the number one employee. You're trying to get that promotion. So, I mean, there are things that can be learned from athletes, and sure. I know people get frustrated because they think athletes make too much, but I always like to remind people, really, it's the reason that athletes get paid so much is because they can. Like the reason why I never, was able to get a 7-figure salary in my 40 years as a journalist is because they wouldn't give it to me. They just said no.
That's a pretty simple way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't give it to me. Now, if they would have given me $1 million to write about sports, would I have taken it? Well, of course I would.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can't blame athletes for getting this. And, all the owners had to do somewhere along the line was say no, but they never did. Yeah. And the reason they didn't is because the sport, the athletes are the sport.
Yep.
Now, obviously, ownership plays a significant role because they do take the risk in terms of what's happening with the team. But without the athlete, there's no enjoyment. We don't tune in to watch the owners. We tune in to see what these guys can do. So, so I think we do have to try to find a way and work with the sports teams to try to get them in there. But I think the points you raised are valid ones. That needed to be explored, and maybe it was. To a certain extent, but probably not to the level that it probably should have. That would be.
And again, hockey separates itself because it's going up into Canada, where the virus doesn't seem to have hit as badly there. And again, we might assume that both the Canadian government and the league itself has looked into, okay, is there enough tests available? Can the labs handle the additional load on there? I mean, you'd think that Toronto, the size of that city, they would be fine. Edmonton is not as big a city, so do they have as much? Are there as many labs there? You would assume that there's not, but I guess because there isn't many tests or many people getting tested positive up in Alberta, the league felt comfortable to go up there and go through that procedure. So, but yeah. I just I'm looking now too, and some of the other stuff we talked about. Remember, didn't we? You kind of asked me, or not kind of asked me? Didn't you ask me a few weeks ago how many guys I thought were going to opt out or not play?
Yeah.
And it was 5 the over under?
I think so. You were around there.
Yeah, it's 6 already, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting? I didn't really factor in let's say an older player who clearly was not going to play very much, or may not play at all, right? He's already got paid all his salary from the regular season. It's not like he's letting his teammate down because he's probably not going to play anyways. So, and there's been some guys that, at least the stories you read, that's part of the reason they made the decision to not go back and play.
But, you say that, but we all know that historically that, players get hurt. And now with this virus, we could end up deep down the depth chart here.
Well, what are they bringing in? They're bringing in 32 players, right? Is it
31? 31, I think.
31. So, I mean, I guess if you've got an older player, so if you get enough injuries or enough positive tests, but now you have to, dip into that extra pool of players there. A team's going to play. Well, I was going to say the team's got to play the younger kid first to give him the experience. But then I'm thinking to myself, well, you want to win.
Yeah.
So you are looking at whether, okay, yes, you want to develop that younger player, but if you got an older guy that is as good as a younger player that's got the experience, then maybe you're going to go with him too. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, with this virus too, the craziness of, contact versus, testing positive for the disease. Like, to me, it's really, and again, I certainly am not an epidemiologist, but, I just read this morning that the positive test rate in South Carolina is now 20%. It was 17 in Florida. And in Michigan here, where we were run over when it first hit, it's less than 1%. Like, that's just amazing. Well, I guess what that tells you is, we've had a strong push to make sure that we were, staying 6 feet apart and, wearing masks and all that kind of stuff. Where in South Carolina and Florida, obviously, they haven't been doing that. But that's the scary stuff. And I bring that up because, we now, yesterday, 3 members of the Montreal Canadiens tested positive. So, and, probably why did that happen? Well, because, it could be one of two things. Either they're, everybody got together, there's more players, in larger groups, and one of them picked it up, or all of them went out to a bar together. I mean, that seems to be a place. Like, I think if, normally I would say if we didn't have concerts and sporting events and bars, I think this would spread less.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, now we don't have sporting events. I mean, at least in terms of fans. So all we have is bars. So my question is this spreading only in the bars and churches too?
Yeah.
Because there's large gatherings of them. So, and I'm a little concerned about South Carolina because my daughter lives there.
Oh, that's right.
And she, has a compromised immune system.
Yeah.
And, not only on top of that, she's scheduled to have a wedding next month.
Oh.
And, when she and her boyfriend decided to get married last December, more than 200 people were likely to come to their wedding. And then that got cut down as the epidemic started to hit. Yeah. And then last Sunday, she informed us that it's just going to be family. So in other words, it would be my 13. And
so you're spending less money.
Well, I'm spending less money, but I don't care. I mean, I'm heartbroken for her that she wanted this big wedding.
Yeah, that's true.
And all that kind of stuff. But she's just really kind of sad about this. But even for us, we're going to go down. We're going down to South Carolina. I'm leaving. My seclusion at my cottage here.
When's the wedding? September?
It's August.
August. And when's your haircut? Is it before? You better be getting your haircut before you go down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're not wearing that hat at a wedding.
No, for sure. Yeah. We're going down to South Carolina, so we've made the decision. My son-in-law is flying, but the rest of us are driving, and we're not going to break up the trip. We're just going to drive straight down. So that'll be, 10 and a half, 11 hours for us. And, then we had to find, places to stay and, all that stuff is now never gave us a second thought before. Yeah. Now it's all right. Where are we staying?
Yeah.
What are we doing? And
very true.
All that kind of stuff. So even with the family, like we're still going to have a gathering of, 25, 30 people. Yeah. So, we got to sort of spread out a little bit. How are we going to do it?
A lot of families, that's not a problem. A lot of families don't want to be together anyways.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but, we'll still have a ceremony and walk down the aisle. And she doesn't want to wear a mask. I don't blame her. She's the bride. So, but I think the rest of us will. So.
Yeah. So Glenn Hutchison here wants to ask me a question. Tom, if your boys were younger in your playing days, would you have opted out? So my sons are 29 and 27 now.
I can answer that for you.
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell.
Yeah. I think probably what I would have done is that, and would have been really tough to do, is I couldn't not have played, but I wouldn't ever want to put my sons at any kind of risk at all. So it would be, like it'd be a terrible, hard thing to do. especially with my relationship with my sons. But it probably would have been more, okay, I'm not going to see you for 3 months. I'm going to go do what I need to do, and I'm going to take an extra 2 weeks after that to make sure that I'm quarantined and not come right back to my sons, right? Easier said than done right now, but I couldn't have left my team, and I would never do anything to put my sons in jeopardy either. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these are decisions we are now making. And it is, I've heard people that don't want to wear a mask and saying, we live with risk every day. Well, yeah, you do. But the risks you normally take, you don't involve me.
Yeah.
And
to me, that argument about not putting on masks, like, so what? Even if you don't believe in it, I get it. I that freedoms and all that kinds of stuff. You don't want government telling you what to do and everything. I get all that kind of stuff, but put it on for somebody else, even if in the end.
I actually don't get the whole freedom thing, simply because we live with these small inconveniences all the time. Like, you don't walk into a grocery store without shoes and a shirt.
But you know what it is, though, Kev? I think so much stuff has happened over the years, and not to get into a political discussion, because it's both sides, it's Republican and Democrat, that we've been lied to. We don't know who to trust. So there's a lot of people in the country just feel like they don't trust anything the government says. So they say that getting the mask is going to stop spreading it. They go, I don't believe it.
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, I am going to turn it into a political thing for just shortly here, just to bring the story up because it's so incredible. My wife needed to get a new phone. So we went to the phone shop, and, they have you stand 6 feet away from the person, you tell them what the deal is. And so they did all that. And we came in wearing masks, which is what we do in Michigan. That's the executive order. And the other customers had masks, but the guy at the counter didn't have a mask. And he explained that, I'm sorry, but this is all just a hoax. That he has friends. He has friends who are nurses. That's his friends who are nurses who are telling me that these people are dying, but they just put COVID-19 no matter what you die of, so they can get the money, he said. Now, I, of course, wanted to ask, what money are they getting? But I didn't. I figured we'll just let him think whatever he wants. And then, lo and behold, after that incredible story, my wife's jaw just about dropped. Because by now, most people my age know somebody who has had disease or know someone who's died of the disease. And we see the impact of what's going on. And, my wife coached a number, it was a 20-year high school coach. So actually has, kids that played for her that are now doctors, and some of them are ER doctors. And, they write on their Facebook pages about how horrible it is. Well, anyway, so after hearing that, you think, well, it's just one person. I read a very similar tale about the major league umpire, Joe West.
Yeah.
Who said pretty much word for word what that young man told us.
Yeah.
That it was a hoax.
Lou Holtz was quoted as saying, we stormed Normandy and we're worried about a virus.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I don't understand. So obviously they're getting that from somewhere.
Well, I tell you, Kev, as this goes on, there are a lot of people out there, the conspiracy theorists, that have a lot of doubts. I saw a rant on Facebook, I think it was, a young lady, and she was irate, and she sounded like she'd done her homework, and she said this whole mask thing's ridiculous. The virus can come up to your eyes or into your eyes, whatever it is. What does putting a mask on do? She went on and on about all the stuff, and there's a lot of people that really believe that it's a conspiracy. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely amazing. I did want to forget, but getting back to hockey, because we tend to get off a little bit on it. But one person that you and I have talked about continuously, because to me, he is sort of the symbol of the player with the pre-existing condition or the underlying condition. Of course, that's Max Domi, who is a type 1 diabetic.
Right.
There are a couple others in the league. Right now they escape me, but he is the highest profile one. And of course, we now know that he has been given a week to 10 days where he doesn't have to report to sort of figure this out. Right. And, we know because there are statistics that diabetics who contract this have a really rough time. And some of them die, and age is not the only um, um, prominent variable. And even though he's young, he's still at risk. And boy, now, it's one thing to be a young, healthy athlete and having to make this decision, because you could sort of do what you suggested, which is I'll just keep my family away from this and I'll quarantine myself. But Max Domi, in order to play, has to put himself at risk.
Totally.
So now, again, it's hard to quantify. He may be fine, but you don't know. And what do you make of that? If you're Max Domi, Tom, what do you do?
Wow. And there's an up and coming young player too, right? Who will everybody wants to play in the playoffs, especially in a city like Montreal and the history and everything there. But I mean, I say this as a compliment to him too. I think people probably would have expected more of his game at this point in his career, right? And so this is an opportunity to come back and really, because I think he's a heck of a hockey player, to come back and really, get going more and more in his career. He should be rested and ready to go. I guess, you'd have to sit with the doctors. How do you, to me, it's such the unknown, right? If I'm the young guy, I'm saying, like we talked before, I remember when I was that young, 23, 24, 25, or even beyond that, I thought I was invincible, right? I literally thought I was invincible. I mean, I ruptured my spleen. I could want to walk out. I don't want to, get on a stretcher when I ruptured my spleen. I spent the night in the hospital with concussion. I go play the next day. And it wasn't just because wasn't me. That's how we all were back then. So we think we're invincible. We think we can fight through anything. It's not going to get me. It can get somebody else, but it won't get to me. So I'm sure that's part of what's going on in his head. I'm sure he's got people around him that love him, and there's team doctors and everything saying, okay, that's great. But, and especially his father being a player, and he was the kind of guy that thought he was invincible too.
Well, he was.
Yeah, he was. With that little head of his. Yeah, you can punch that head as hard as you wanted to and would do it. But so I'm sure they're saying to him, okay, well, that's great. I know how you're feeling. I know you think you're invincible, but this is a potentially deadly disease we're dealing with here. So you got to be careful. So that is a real tough one. And you touched on it too. Like I was reading about Travis Hamonic, and there's a couple other guys here with family members with the, immune system problems, and they were not playing because they're thinking of them. Like, man, that's got to be like, if there's one thing, okay, you're putting yourself at risk. And then the other thing, and then answering Glenn's question there a while ago, thinking about, how would I feel about myself if I did something to put my family at risk? I mean, that's even worse than what you do to yourself, I think. So.
Oh, you're right on, Tom. I mean, I think that's a much easier decision that Hamonic made. Yeah. Because, you're never going to, at least not many people that I have ever met, would put their children at risk. Like that's an easy call for me. My kids are in trouble,
You drop everything. Yeah.
Drop everything. But yourself, like you said, that's a little bit, Max Domi's not married,
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing too, kind of on that. I was listening to the radio this morning, and they're telling the story how the basketball players down in Orlando are getting there. They've only been there for a few days, and there's some girl, and she's showing the messages. She's a Instagram model, is getting direct messages from some of the basketball players inviting her to come to the hotel. And she's showing the messages and everything. Like she snapshot the message and showing them. So it's not like her just saying this. Like, and we talked about this before.
I know.
Young athletes just think they are invincible. They're young, successful, wealthy, in shape guys, and women, to be locked up for a while, they'll find a way to, or try to find a way to get around that. And that's, to me, that's the part of the problem, right? You can build this bubble if you want, but I'm not blaming the league. It's just, you can't build a perfect bubble to stay away from it altogether.
Well, and getting back to Max Domi, like, it's not like he doesn't understand his disease.
Yep.
Like he has lived with this his whole life. Yep. Like, and this isn't diabetes, especially diabetes 1, childhood diabetes that he's had his whole life. This is not a walk in the park.
Yep.
Like, in order to be an athlete, he's had to really overcome the trials and tribulations of having this disease. Like he has a pump, which regulates it, in his body. But, he has told me, I've interviewed him a couple of times, that during games, he's had to make adjustments. He hasn't felt well, and he's had to consult with his doctor. during a game, and they've had to make adjustments. So it's not like it's never bothered him. So he knows what's at stake here. He
Right.
understands all this. This is not something that's new to him that he's sorting out and doesn't know the ramifications. He knows it all. So I wouldn't be shocked, nor would I hold it against him.
Yeah. Man, that's gonna be a tough one, right? Imagine being the player, a young player too.
Yeah.
You haven't played a whole lot. You make the decision to be safe and not go back and play, and then you're watching your team play in the playoffs, and who knows in Montreal, maybe they go on a long run too. I mean, that just would be.
Yeah.
I wonder what would happen. That's interesting. So if he let's say he opts out and decides not to play, Montreal gets on a roll. They start winning a couple of rounds. He can always opt back in again, can he?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, that's probably one they haven't thought about before.
Yeah. So what? I mean, because he's not saying you're not breaking some contract or anything like that. He's not like changes his status under collective bargaining.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you probably have to establish your 31-person roster, so he wouldn't be on that roster. So you couldn't bring in
right.
So I would say,
if you're the Montreal Canadiens, would you have the conversation and say, well, maybe you could come back and play, and you keep him on that 31-man roster?
I think they could do that, because that would be no different than an injured player that they think is going to be back.
Yeah, totally. So you think about that, Montreal gets on a roll, and now all of a sudden they add a caliber of player like Max Domi.
Yeah, well, but he'd have to quarantine and all that stuff. But that's a difficult thing. But I said the other day, and I compared it to the movie Midway, where a guy came back to fly a mission and everything. This isn't war. That guy was fighting for his country, and we're playing a game. Let's not lose sight of that. We really are. I love sports. No one is more passionate about it than I do, but we tend to forget. We're just playing a game here. Yeah. We're trying to get one more goal than the other team.
Right. And they talk about the places like the bars and the churches where people are getting the virus because they're so close together and everything, right? Well, how do you, like in football and hockey, how do you not be close together with everybody? I mean, what if somebody runs your goaltender? Do you just say, well, I can't come and help out my goaltender? Normally somebody runs your goaltender, you're on top of them, and then anybody's on top of you, and the next guy's on top of the next guy, right? So by nature, it's just going to, and then you're in the locker room, you're on the bench, spits flying around, and I just listen. I'm like you. I want hockey back, but I guess on hockey's case, the fact if they can get everybody up there, get them all tested, so they're in the bubble up in Canada where it hasn't been hit as badly, then you would think that they're all right. But I fear that we get everybody there, and all of a sudden now there's an outbreak of the virus. And it just spreads it's like wildfire, right? That it just gets everybody.
Well, and I'd be willing to bet in every sport that within the first week of maybe 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the bubble being established, that somebody is going to violate that. And
somehow the virus is going to get into that bubble.
Well, or that there'll be some violation that will leave them susceptible to it, and it won't be reported. We won't know about it, but and even now, originally I thought, well, they're going to bring all the cooks and stuff, and everyone's going to be in there. Nobody's going to leave. We're going to lock them down. It's like when you I think it started back in my years, so over 40 years ago, where the seniors on lockdown day, everybody gets locked into the gym. They have an all-night party for the senior class and all that, and they literally lock the doors and put teachers at everyone. Like that. That's my vision of what.
Did you do that? Did they do that when you were a senior?
I think they did. Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah, senior high school, but we have a lot. We had 600 people in my class. So.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
yeah. So.
And you were at the top of the class, correct?
I was not at the very top. No, I was not valedictorian. Right. So, were you at the top of your class?
Well, in Canada, where I was in Ontario, in high school, they had a 5-year course or a 4-year course. The 4-year course was more like learning how to be a truck driver, learning welding and all that kinds of stuff. So after near the end of my 4th year, I got recruited to go play at Northern Michigan University with a scholarship. So I would have either had to, say, oh, I'll come next year and finish off my 5th year. That's the course I was in, or just switch over in the last semester to the so I switched over because I wanted to get out of there, get playing hockey in Northern Michigan. So I don't even know where I was in my class. It actually was kind of funny. I was my sons really did pretty well at school, were very intelligent, and I think, what was I doing? I was coaching a high school team, and they had to go back and do all the background check and get my grades and everything. So they got my grades from high school, and I do not remember them being that bad, but they were not very good at all. It was, it was concentrating on hockey way too much. I actually was a pretty good student. So when I got the grades, I was like, what? Was I really that bad? And then my boys loved it too. They thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah. There's nothing like trying to explain what you're, or you're, as I like to say, I went to college in the 1970s.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that went on there that I would rather not explain to my kids.
Do you ever sit down and have that talk with your kids?
We talked about it when they were high school.
Well, now that they're out of school and they're older, right? I'm the same thing with my boys. I would never have told them when they were going off to college for me to tell them some of the stuff that happened in college back when I was there. Yeah, it's like giving them a green light to go do whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah, no, I know for sure. Yeah, we were just talking about the. I went to orientation with my daughter, my oldest child, and I'll never forget because the guy who gave the orientation for the parents, he was like a stand-up comedian. And he started out by saying, that 95 percentile that your kids were smarter than when they took the SAT on the English score, none of them are here. So he said, all the people who are here at this school are just as smart. And he goes, and it's just going to be as competitive as heck.
Right.
And then he goes, when you call and you want to know what your kids' grades are, we're not going to tell you because it's none of your business. They're 18 years old. When they get sick and go to the hospital, we don't call. If they get arrested for minor impossession, you won't hear it from us. I said, you got to get a relationship with your kids. Yeah. And that's hard on a parent, because you're paying the bills. You're paying the bills and you can't get any information. So unless your kid tells you.
Well, it was a little different for me. I had a scholarship too. So my parents, they never got there. There was no cell phones. So they dropped me off at Northern Michigan University, drove back to the farm in Brampton, Ontario, and they didn't hear from me for months. Like what's going on,
No, you just moved on. Yeah, I get that for sure. Yeah, it was the 70s too.
It was the 70s, yes.
Yeah.
When I grew up, I was a farm boy, so when I went to Northern Michigan University, I saw some things I'd never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, you probably did things you had never seen before. So
eventually, yes, I was talked into it. I really didn't want to.
Yeah, you were talked into it. That's what I've heard all the way along. Anyway, as usual, we've gone beyond our 30 minutes. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation, and I'm excited that as we move forward here, I think over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking a lot more about competition as well, instead of the ethics of trying to get restarted here. But as Tom and I pointed out, we now have players who are opting out. I think we'll probably have more as people think about this a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a large number, but I think there'll be more. So anyway, please stay tuned. We'll be back on Wednesday.
See you guys on Wednesday.